T minus 50 seconds. T minus 40 seconds. T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Welcome to Day 4 of TechFest, proudly brought to you by IT at Cork and SkillNet, where we'll be talking all things related to the future of work and are looking forward to hearing from our experts and thought leaders. I'm excited to be speaking to you this morning live from the new VE studio in the Northlink Business Park on the Old Mallow Road, leveraging this state-of-the-art virtual studio experience. It's pretty cool stuff. Today's theme is the future of work. Prior to COVID-19, much of the conversation on how technology would impact on the future of work primarily focused on the adoption of AI and machine learning and the evolution of robotic process automation and how it would impact our jobs and roles now and into the future. COVID has in many ways changed the conversation. The speed of remote working adoption has seen a rapid shift towards embracing technology and digital innovation. We are using technology to connect us to each other and negate some of the challenges we face in connecting with our customers and our teams. Communication is going to be key, and organizations that embrace digital innovation in fostering culture, collaboration, managing teams, hiring, interviewing, and onboarding will succeed in the remote and hybrid working models that now are the future of work. Notwithstanding the pandemic and the challenges that it poses to the wider economy, there are still significant skills demand in key areas around cybersecurity, cloud infrastructure, AI and data. As we continue to embrace the new hybrid working models, these skills will be in demand even more. The southwest of Ireland is a significant European tech cluster with 30,000 tech professionals working in the region. Despite the recent economic commentary, there are real signs of growth again in the tech sector. The Southwest offers that perfect balance of job opportunity and work-life balance that is and will continue to be in demand in the future. I'm really looking forward to the keynote from Tom Raftery, Futurist and Innovation Evangelist in SAP, and following that, a world-class panel of experts from Gartner, WorkVivo, and Abudu. We encourage you to sit back, enjoy the day's events, and I'll pass you now to our MC today, Gillian Bergen, and our platform partner for this event, Trend Micro.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Paddy, for that introduction. Please give our regards to the VE Studio team. They've been amazing to work with all week, and I think Cork is so fortunate to have that kind of technology on our doorstep. I'm here at Trend Micro. Big shout out for tech guru here, Kevin Flynn, who's keeping me all on track. And also to Vivian and Owen, who from IT at Cork are also helping us here in the background. Lots of early mornings this week for you guys, so thank you so much. You're all very welcome. My name is Gillian Bergen and I'll be your MC for today. I can't believe it's day 4 already of TechFest. Gosh, this week is absolutely flying. And so far this week, we have debated and discussed all things smart cities, IoT, cybersecurity, future of education, and today we are going to explore the future of work. But before we crack on, special thank you to our learning network, IT at Cork SkillNet, which supports companies of all sizes in the tech sector in the Southwest region to address current and future skills needs by providing subsidised training and development solutions. They are funded, of course, by the National Training Fund through the Department of Education and Skills. So if your organisation has unmet training needs, our very own Annette Coburn is waiting to get your call. But actually you can email her at skillnet@itcork.ie. Annette, I promise I will not give out your phone number. Alrighty, okay, as always, these sessions are recorded and we do that so that we can make them available afterwards to our members and the general public in the coming days. We encourage you to tweet and post as you desire, so that is your hashtag, if I get out of the way, TechCork20. And also your opinions are very important to us, so you will see some polls coming up on screen during the webinar. And let's see now if we can get one of those on screen now so you can get an idea of what they look like. There we go. So if you're working from home during COVID-19, would you like to do it on a more permanent basis post-COVID? So let us know your thoughts on that, and we will let you know the results very shortly. And you will see how both you and the rest of Ireland are feeling on that one. All right, that's the logistics done. So I think we'll get stuck in. I don't think I need to tell anyone how COVID-19 has changed the workplace and forced employers to embrace remote working almost overnight. In fact, the speed of it has been phenomenal. Now how we connect, engage, and innovate has gone virtual. Many have learned that by not having a fit-for-purpose work-from-home policy has been to their detriment. And the big question on everyone's minds right now is how much of this will stick? Is traditional working as we know it a thing of the past? Will company cultures change forever? And will the face-to-face that we are used to fade into history? So I'm looking forward to exploring these questions with our panel today. And there will also be an opportunity for you to ask questions, of course. Anytime a question pops into your mind, please do drop it into the Q&A function at the base of your screen, and we will get to those at the end of the keynote and the panels. So with that, it is my pleasure now to introduce our keynote speaker for today. All the way from Seville in Spain, please welcome Tom Raftery, Global VP, Futurist, and Innovation Evangelist at SAP. Hola, Tom, are you there?
Good morning, Gillian. Thanks a million for that. Yes, I am here. It's not as sunny today as it has been the last few months, I have to say. In fact, there's a bit of rain forecast for this evening, which will be our first rain in probably since April. So it's a very different climate here than it is in Cork. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation to speak today. Will I just plow in?
Do, absolutely.
I don't know if you can hear, my dogs are barking outside, so apologies if they're coming across.
That is the future of work, Tom. That is the future of work. We invite babies, furry babies, everything. So yes, they're all welcome.
Fantastic, fantastic. For people who've seen me present before, because I've done a few presentations in the last number of years for IT at Cork, both in person and virtually. For people who've seen me present before, this is going to be a very different presentation today. I normally use a lot of slides. I typically average around 3 slides a minute. So a 30-minute presentation would be at least 90 slides, and so on. Today I'm not using any slides. So this is a first for me. So congratulations, you are my guinea pigs. I won't be doing slides today. I said before we came on air this morning to Gillian as well to feel free to hop in at any point and participate in what I want to be a conversation, because this virtual presenting is hard. It's hard on me and it's hard on you. I can give a monologue for 20, 30, 40, 50 an hour, that kind of thing, but you guys would just fall asleep. It's very different when it's being done virtually. If I was in the room with all of you today, I'd be going, "Good morning, everyone," and then putting the hand up to the ear and going, "That wasn't loud. You can do better than that. Come on." But of course, that doesn't work in this environment. So it's a very different one. And hence, I thought it would be better, rather than me just going slide after slide after slide after slide, to have more of a conversation. So that's what I'm hoping to do today. For people who don't know me, I am originally from Cork, now, as Gillian said, based in Spain. I was involved in the IT at Cork community very actively when I was in Cork. I was on the committee of IT at Cork from 2005, I think it was, to 2008, 2004, 2005 to 2008. I was chair of the conference committee, et cetera, et cetera. So I have a long history with IT at Cork. I moved here to Spain in 2008. For personal rather than professional reasons, and I've been living and working here since. I joined SAP in 2016. Before that, I worked as an industry analyst from 2008 to 2016, specializing in energy and sustainability. I joined SAP in 2016. SAP, if you're not familiar, is the largest technology company in Europe. We have about a little over 100,000 employees globally, offices in 180 companies, revenue reported last year of 27.5 billion euros because we're a European company headquartered in Germany. We make software that's used pretty much universally. If you had breakfast this morning, there's a more than 90% chance, I would say, that at least part of your breakfast was made using our software. Nestle are one of our big customers, for example, and a lot of the food companies. The clothes you're wearing, there's a large chance as well that some part of the manufacture or the sale of those clothes used our software. If you have a car, it was probably manufactured using our software. If you are using electricity in Ireland today, the ESB is a large customer of ours, and so are several of the other energy companies there. If you have an iPhone, it can go on and on. The iTunes and the App Store in Apple is powered by our software. In Ireland, we have been in Ireland since '97. We have about 1,700 employees, and we have 2 locations in Ireland, one in Dublin and the other in Galway, which is a little bit surprising, I think. I'm surprised it's not in Cork, but maybe we'll get a third location sometime in the future. My role is a futurist and innovation evangelist. I'm a global VP. Global VP means my role is literally that, global. I don't have a region. I'm not Europe North. I'm not Spain. I'm global. So that means up until February of this year, there was a lot of travel involved in my job. And then the shutters came down. So I probably won't be traveling. I won't be traveling for the rest of this year, and probably not for a significant part of next year. In my role as a futurist, what I tend to do is I look at trend lines of technologies, what's been happening the last number of years, and what are the implications for that going forward. Things like in the automotive sector, the case megatrends, as they're called, the connectivity of cars increasing, the shift to electrification, the shared and the autonomous vehicles, those kinds of trends. In energy, the shift to renewables and away from fossil fuels, those kinds of things. So that's what I do. I look at those trend lines and analyze and predict where they're going to go. Of course, COVID has significantly impacted that, because it was kind of a black swan event, which kind of came out of left field and has impacted me, because I'm now working from home and not traveling and doing events like I did before, but also it's kind of thrown the future into some serious doubt. A lot of the things I would have predicted have been put on hold, for example. But Bill Gates has a great quote about the future, where he says, we tend to overestimate what can happen in the next 2 years and underestimate what can happen in the next 10. And, I think that's very true, because if you think back 10 years ago, that was when Apple introduced the iPad, and now they're completely ubiquitous. And that's just a change that's happened in 10 years, a little more than 10 years. Smartphones were introduced in 2007, 2008, and now they're completely ubiquitous and we use them for everything. The impact of the coronavirus has been enormous. If we look at the impact on our working conditions, as several people have mentioned already, most of us are now working from home, and that has been a huge change. For me, it hasn't been as big a change, because since 2004, I've had a home office and worked from home when I wasn't traveling anyway. As Gillian mentioned, I am based in Seville. The nearest SAP office to me is in Madrid, which is 550 kilometers away. So I've been to our German headquarters more than I've been to our Madrid office. We also have an office in Barcelona, but that's 1,000 kilometers away. So working from home for me isn't that unusual, but I know it is for a lot of people, and it's a big change. And to be honest, we saw the poll there at the start, and I don't remember the numbers exactly, but I did see that the largest, the most popular option chosen by people was to have a mixture going forward of work from home and going to the office. And that makes sense. That makes sense because there is a certain freedom you get from working from home, which is nice to have. But there's also, you miss that kind of interaction that you get in the office space. there's also, I don't think anyone misses the commute. I don't think anyone is missing, being stuck in a car in a traffic jam, trying to get either side of the tunnel there, for example. Those line backs from the tunnel are a complete pain, I'm sure. I haven't experienced them as much recently, but I'm sure you guys have. The shift to remote working is one that I think is here to stay. It'll depend, obviously, on the job you do and whether you want to work from home. But most people do want it to continue. But it is, because we have the technologies to do it. It is here to stay for a lot of people, particularly in the technology industry. Manufacturing is different. Manufacturing jobs, you typically need to be there on the line doing whatever it is. But for technology, for software development and that kind of thing, this is something that you can do from home very well. So that's going to continue, and it's going to continue for a number of reasons. It's going to continue because we've discovered we can do it, which is good. We've discovered in most cases, I know in our case in SAP, there has not been a hit on productivity. The opposite. We've in some cases seen an increase in productivity, which is phenomenal. So that right there, that's one data point which says this is something that can continue into the future. The other thing that tells me it's going to stay is the fact that people don't hate it. We saw in the poll there at the start, people said that they would like, to keep doing it to an extent, but they'd also like to go back to the office sometime as well. So kind of a mix. So I think that's how it will continue. We have to think as well about COVID. How long is this going to continue for? We've had it now 6 months, and it is going to continue for another at least 12 months, which is something that's hard to swallow, but that's the reality. The head of the CDC yesterday, in a deposition to the Congress, said that the rollout of the vaccine will take, the generalized rollout of the vaccine will take until at least the end of the second quarter, third quarter next year, which is where we are now. So we're looking at 12 months before we get a vaccine rolled out. And that is if we do get a vaccine. Probably we will, but that isn't guaranteed. So we're looking at, another 12 months of this. So this is kind of, a lot of people compare the change that we're going to see to the kind of change we saw after 9/11, but that's not the kind of impact I see, because 9/11 was a single day event. This is a 18-month, 24-month event. This is long, which means it will live on in our cultural memory. It will have the kind of impact that a war, a multi-year war would have on people, because it's impacted our daily lives and it impacts the way we interact with people. So it will have a long impact culturally on us moving forward. We will be slower to interact with people, that kind of thing. So it is going to have an impact on us long term. It will have an impact as well on retail and commercial office space, for example. I mean, if we go to that model, which people chose in the poll at the start, of a mix of home and office, maybe 2 days a week in the office and 3 days a week at home, or vice versa, even if it's 1 day at home and 4 days in the office, that means, that's 20% less commercial office space that's required. I mentioned the impact on retail. That's real as well, because very much people are now shifting to buying stuff online because A, they can because they're at home, and B, stuff gets delivered. It's generally safer than going to a shop that's crowded with people who may or may not be wearing masks, you know. So that's a shift that has happened, and because we'll be doing it for another 12 months at least, it will become part of our norm. I mentioned the types of organization. Oh, I should have said at the start as well, by the way, I want this to be a conversation. I did mention to Gillian to jump in at any time, but also to yourselves in the audience. If you have any comments or questions, do feel free to put them into the Q&A, and I'll hit them in real time if I can. So if I have the Q&A window open up here beside me on my screen, so if I see something pop up there, I'll address it as it appears. But I mentioned the types of organizations. So software development, pretty much that can be done. Manufacturing, as I mentioned as well, though, much harder to do. And we've seen it ourselves. We have lots of customers who are in manufacturing, and there's been a huge impact on them because most of the manufacturing customers we have, their manufacturing lines were not set up for, and now they have to have physical distancing for the health and safety of their employees. So there's a number of possibilities for them. If you're a manufacturer and you have to maintain physical distancing on your lines, then you need an EHS and health and safety system that can monitor your employees and make sure they are maintaining physical distancing, and to track if they have not, for, you know, track and trace purposes, or contact tracing purposes, I should say. But if you do have to maintain physical distancing, then it means that less work can get done on that line. If less work can get done on that line, that means less production. Your output as a manufacturer falls unless you can, A, stand up a new manufacturing line, which is difficult because, you know, you need physical space for that, and most manufacturers don't have a lot of extra physical space handy to stand up a new line. You could put on extra shifts. So if you weren't a 24/7 operation, maybe shift to a 24/7 operation. But again, lots of manufacturers can't do that. Maybe they're already 24/7. There's cost implications if you do that as well. And there's cost implications for all these things. Then there's the other possibility, which is to increase automation. And that's what a lot of our customers are starting to do now in the manufacturing space. They're increasing automation so that they can get almost the same amount of output with fewer staff. And again, that takes time and that takes investment. So long term, we're going to see a rise in cost of living because you're probably seeing it yourselves. If not now, you will soon. If you think of going to the hairdresser now, for example, previously you would just walk in, sit down, wait your turn, get your hair done or cut or whatever it is, and then walk out. Now, at least here, it's probably similar in Ireland, at least here, you have to make an appointment. When you get there, you wait outside until you're asked to come in. The space that you're going to occupy when you get your hair cut is disinfected before you sit down. It's disinfected when you're finished. So that's a lot of extra work for the hairdresser. So again, their productivity falls. If their productivity falls, they either put up their price or they take a cut in income. And I'm seeing John McSweeney's dropped a question in there. What about a rise in AI? Yeah, so that's what I meant about automation, John. When I said that manufacturers are increasing automation, there's an increase in AI starting to take place in manufacturing now. We're seeing a big increase in that, particularly, like I said, in manufacturing. What we're seeing there as well is a big shift to cloud, because to increase your automation, you either need to stand up your own servers or you need to shift to cloud. Everyone's going to cloud now anyway. It's a trend, so why wouldn't you? It's faster to roll out a cloud solution than standing up your own servers and trying to maintain them. So we're seeing both a shift to AI and consequently a shift to cloud. At the start of the outbreak, when the lockdowns hit, we in SAP offered our customers a series of free solutions, which were cloud delivered for these reasons, and the uptake blew us away. It really, really did. We had a huge, huge uptake, and this isn't an ad for SAP. We weren't the only companies doing this. Our competitors were as well, obviously. So, this is a trend we have seen over and over and over again. And I'm seeing another question here from Ricardo. Do you foresee the companies will start to hire without? Yes, absolutely. Hire without location. That was a point I was coming to, Ricardo. Thanks for bringing that up. So when I was in Cork, I ran a software company for a while, and I worked in another one for a while. And when we were hiring, it was always, people in the area, people in the greater Cork area. But now, if people are working remotely, and working remotely has been tested and has passed the tests with flying colors the last 6 months, why would you limit yourself to just hiring from Cork? You could hire from London, you could hire from Germany, you could hire from, I won't go outside the time zones too much because it gets more complicated the further away you go. So probably close enough to your own time zone, CET and UK, Ireland would be good places to hire from. But if you're a larger company, I mentioned in SAP, we have offices in 180 countries globally. So that isn't an issue for us. But if you're a Cork-based company who are looking to hire more developers, sure, you could hire them from anywhere now. You don't need them to come into the office. Donna, global companies have started rebalancing their teams to lower cost economies. That's a trend, Donna, that's been going on for a long time. The amount of development that's done by corporations from India, for example, that's been done for a good while. I haven't seen a huge uptick in that in the last 6 months because it's been something that's been gone for a long time, I think. Noel, what are the wider ethical implications for job losses in organizations looking towards developing countries for remote working? I don't think that's a big issue in the software industry, Noel, because while a lot of development jobs have shifted to places like India, there are very few unemployed developers, I think. I think it would be hard for you to be a developer and be out of work for a long time. So I don't see that as a big issue. Graham, do you see any new industries advancing as a result of COVID? And what long-term psychological effects do you see this having on people? Yeah, so the second part of that, Graham, was actually the next thing I was coming on to. So thank you for that. Empathy is where I was going next. I think we are going to see a big increase in the requirement for empathy from organizations. This is a stressful time. We've all gone through a lockdown. There is a pandemic. We don't know if the person sitting beside us on a bus, if we're on a bus, or beside us at the checkout counter in the shop has COVID, and they might not know either. There are asymptomatic people who are contagious. It's a stressful time. Most of us have kids or parents we're concerned about. I have 2 boys. One of them is asthmatic and the other is type 1 diabetes. That's a concern, because diabetics are disproportionately affected by COVID. My wife's a school teacher, and she's frontline. My father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2010. He's still alive. He's in a full-time residential care facility in Kinsale. That's a concern. That's a big concern. That's a really big concern. When the virus started in February, that was my biggest worry. That was really my biggest worry, my father, because he's in full-time residential care and, it hits older people disproportionately. And if something happened to him, I couldn't get home. I couldn't get back to Ireland. I wouldn't be able to organize and attend his funeral. Since he was diagnosed in 2010, pretty much every day I've woken up, I've been composing and recomposing the eulogy I would give at his funeral. And now I don't know if I can, if anything happens. Fortunately, the facility he's been in hasn't been hit by COVID. So luckily that hasn't been an issue, but that could change tomorrow. The other stresses we have apart from family is job security, because, I wouldn't like to be a hotel worker right now or a cinema employee right now. Jobs are going to be lost, lots of them. And, I'm fortunate to work for SAP. SAP has given a commitment to lay nobody off in 2020, but they haven't said anything about 2021, so that's a concern as well. And I'm sure you all have concerns about your own jobs, and I think I've pretty much hit my time. It's 9:30 now. So what are the questions?
Me back on there now if you want to.
Yeah, thanks, Gillian. So with the loss
Tom.
of jobs, do you see...
Actually,
go on, Gillian, jump in.
I was just thinking there are a few things that you mentioned that I'd love to come back to.
Super.
The idea of the commute. I think a lot of people, before we went into all of this, saw the commute as a bit of a waste of time. They could be doing something more productive. It's only now that people are realizing the commute had a function. And, on the way to work, it allowed you to get your head into gear, get into the work zone. And then on the way back from work, it allowed you to decompress, put the work stuff into the work part of your mind, get into the mindset for home, for children, for family, and all that comes with that. Have you heard anything else in that space, or, the changes that have come on us with COVID-19 have come on so fast, and humans, being human, we like to have time to adjust. We haven't had that.
Yeah.
Any thoughts there?
So short answer is not really, because I haven't done a commute since 2004. So it isn't something I've given a lot of thought to. When I'm in the car, I typically listen to podcasts. So it's a great opportunity for that. And instead of doing that now, I listen to podcasts when I'm walking the dogs, which I do first thing in the morning. Every morning, I take about a 4-kilometer walk in the local area and listen to podcasts there. But I take your point. My commute is a 5-step walk into the home office, so that doesn't give me a whole lot of time to kind of step up into the work mode and step back down into family mode. And I'm doing that multiple times during the day anyway, because I'm stepping out to deal with something the kids are.
That's exactly the point there, I think, Tom, because you've worked remotely for quite some time. You've learned to step in and out of those two zones quite seamlessly. And I think that's where we're all going to have to evolve, is find other ways to replace the commute with an ability to move smoothly in and out of our mindsets, if you like.
Yeah.
You also talked about productivity and SAP and other companies seeing actually an increase in productivity when they went to remote working. Some companies will argue that's a peak at the beginning and it tapers off a little bit. Have you seen that, or is there an ability to maintain productivity in some long-standing momentum?
Honestly, I'd say you're right. I would say that was just an initial peak. We don't have enough data yet, but we haven't seen any big loss of productivity. Is I guess the main takeaway. So people often said that in the past, before we had all this, before there was mass working from home, people said working from home can never work because, and they tried out all these different reasons, and loss of productivity would be one of them. That hasn't happened.
Mm-hmm.
So that argument is dead in the water, for at least in the kind of work we're typically doing,
Yeah. And there's a good question in there from Benjamin as well. With the loss of jobs, so that we're not all doom and gloom in this new environment, do we foresee any new jobs, ones that are being invented as we speak? Anything new coming there?
Yeah, I mean, so there's going to be a requirement for people to be employed in contact tracing, for example. There's going to be a requirement for people to be involved in vaccine rollout. I mean, rolling out 7 billion vaccine injections or whatever it is, whatever it will be, the logistics required to do that are absolutely enormous on the scale of nothing we have ever done as a species in the history of the planet. Just the truck rolls of the vaccine alone, just that, the vaccine, again, we haven't one, so we don't know exactly, but because it's a pharmaceutical product, you know, the track and tracing that will be required around that will be enormous. It will probably have to be within a certain temperature for its lifetime, from leaving wherever it's produced to the time it arrives in the care center where it's administered to a patient. So it will, you know, there will be thresholds of temperature above and below which it cannot go. And there will have to be a traceability around that to demonstrate that it hasn't gone above or below those temperatures, so that it hasn't gone off, so that it is a live, viable vaccine. Just creating the technology to do that for 7.5 billion, you know, vaccinations will be enormous. We've never done anything like that before. Yeah. And that's...
And we even saw yesterday as well, actually, Tom, the stuff in the future of education, the AR, VR stuff that was coming out of there. There's absolutely going to be new careers, jobs
absolutely.
Coming out of that as well.
The content development for AR and VR, just that, creating, not just, we already, for in most cases, we have the curriculums, but every time there's a new curriculum, new books have to come out. They have to be written and they have to, you know, stick with the curriculum. Now, all that has to be transferred into AR and VR stuff, which is a completely different type of content creation. So, you know, huge jobs being rolled out there as well. So, yeah. And the other thing, of course, around vaccines is, if this is a vaccination program which requires yearly boosters, then we're talking 7.5 billion vaccines a year, which is a whole nother scale of issue altogether, all over again. You know, so... and lots of jobs there in lots of different areas, from production of the vaccine to transport of the vaccine to administration of the vaccine and so on, and tracking who has been vaccinated. Will we have vaccination passports? That's a whole other thing as well. You know, can you prove you're not contagious? Can you prove that you have been vaccinated?
Brilliant. Thanks, Tom. And I know some folks have questions there with regard to culture and stuff. We're going to hold that for the panel because we have a number of questions in that space for the panel. But just before we move to the panel, Tom, one last question that came up there, and I think it's a very relevant one. The issue of data security as people work from home. With the flexibility of work from home, maybe we get a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more casual. We don't, you know, take as much notice as who's standing behind us. Maybe we don't lock our laptops. You know, what is the advice there, both for companies and employees, as we, you know, go through this prolonged period of working remotely?
Sure, very good question. Because in any IT landscape, the biggest problems for penetrations typically are, you know, people hacking into your network. And if you have a physical office space, you can contain the network to that building pretty much. But if you're extending your network to the homes of all your employees, it means your threat landscape has increased by orders of magnitude, and maintaining that secure is a huge challenge. Now we have technologies to do that, like VPNs and things like that. But so you will need to maintain a secure environment. You will need to ensure your employees have access to a proper VPN, that they only have access to the work environment while they're within the VPN, you know, all that kind of thing. Securing emails is going to be another issue. So yeah, that's the security landscape has changed significantly with the massive move to work from home. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, and I think companies are certainly going to be starting to add that to their training for employees, this whole idea of working safely and securely from home. So thanks, Tom. You're going to stay with us now to join the panel. So I'd like to ask the rest of the panel now to turn on their cameras and mics as I introduce you. So please welcome Peter Rawlinson, Chief Marketing Officer at WorkVivo. Please welcome Vanessa Tierney, co-founder of Abodu. Rob O'Donoghue, supporting CIOs on leadership, culture and people for Gartner, and also founder of a podcast series called Rob of the Green. And Tom, as I mentioned, you are going to stay with us. So you're all very welcome, folks. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be here.
Well, excellent. Okay, so I have a list of questions here before we jump to those coming in on the live Q&A. Vanessa, I might start with you if that's okay. Employees who have been remote for a long time talk about experiencing a new fairness. So that's one of the positives, right? They've felt, I guess, in the past that they were missing out on things, that decisions were made when the call was dropped, or they were missing out on corridor conversations, whatever it is. And they're kind of saying now we're all in a level pitch, as they say. We might have all come in the different boats, but we're all in the same boat now. So what other advantages do you see of remote working? And I know Abodu speaks specifically about smart working. Can you talk a little bit about that for us?
Yeah, sure. Well, maybe I'll start with the smart working and then work backwards. So smart working, we started playing around with that phrase a few years ago because we discovered that a lot of companies weren't necessarily ready for fully remote. And I guess fully remote, there's only a handful of companies in Ireland doing that right now. And the idea behind smart working is there's loads of different models. We've seen people do hybrid, so 4 days in the office, 1 day at home, hot desking, which we all started to see with the open plan offices. That's obviously a no-go now. Co-working centres, like when we started a few years ago, there was just your local enterprise centres and a few private digital hubs. Now there are over 300 combined in Ireland. There's at least one in every county. So smart working is really an opportunity for a company more now than ever to really establish what is it that they're going to have for today during the pandemic and then post-pandemic. And I think going back to Tom's point about like psychological sort of security and knowing what's happening, the more companies can bite the bullet and actually say, this is going to be our model, not just for 2020, but into 2021 and even into 2022. It'll let everyone breathe because it is a really stressful time. And then I guess going back to the benefits of remote, it's funny, like I never thought I'd be suited for remote working. I was kind of forced into it 10 years ago. I couldn't commute due to an illness and I thought I'd lose my mind at home. And after a couple of months, you know, I'm sure everyone's experienced it now. The first few months were hard and then you get to 4 or 5 months and we're all creatures of habit. You form a new habit. And you think, actually, this is not bad. And the benefits, like everyone's probably experiencing, it's a bit of a weird situation having kids at home and trying to work. Like that is not normal. Everyone kept saying, oh, you must be delighted now the world is remote working. And, you know, I'm like, with Joe, everyone got to see my kids before this morning started. And that's not normal, you know, they're at school, thankfully now. And I think like in a normal world, the benefits are, you do get that freedom back. You get to be fitter and healthier. I know so many people that have lost lots of weight, but the mental well-being is. Tom's shaking his head.
I put on weight.
That's the other thing. Yeah, you need to have like a noisy fridge or something, or a bell that goes off. But like I think the mental well-being, I know on a personal level, I found this year really hard in lockdown. I had a baby just before Christmas, and I guess, you know, that experience not really take off. So I think the mental well-being and doing things to help someone. So like, for example, outside activities or sports, it just makes such a difference. And you get that back. A 2-hour daily commute is 10 hours in a week. And then financially, I'm sure we're experiencing it. If you haven't lost your job, your bank balance is probably healthier and your savings are healthier. And then the kids and your friends, they get used to seeing you more, you know. I feel like this is true living. And I'm a fan of the hybrid model. I think social interaction is absolutely key. So, yeah.
Thanks, Vanessa. And yeah, I think I'm a fan of the hybrid model as well. But like that, you know, when all of this started, certainly for the first month or two, I was putting on the weight, and then you start, as you said, you kind of look in the mirror and go, God, I need to develop some new habits here. And then you start to get better at organizing yourself. So, I struggled with the work from home at the beginning as well, but I'm definitely coming around to it now. And I think the hybrid model going forward is definitely what I'll be going for. And we're going to talk about the stress of some of those scenarios you just talked about as well there, Vanessa. But just to build on what Vanessa said, Pete, I might move to you if that's okay. How do you feel the recent accelerated move to a distributed workforce is impacting both employees and employers?
Yeah, Janina, it's a great question. And, I think Tom mentioned this earlier, like COVID brought about a situation where there was kind of not just a mass move to remote working, distributed working environment, but it happened literally overnight. So, you have different personality types within organizations, you have different cultural types, different people have different roles, and everyone's forced to be in a situation. And some people, kind of like being kind of remote and working in that environment. There's a lot of people that just don't work well in that situation. So, I think that we've mentioned it a couple of times today, and it's interesting, the poll that just came out, the poll results that just came out there, loss of engagement was about 51% in terms of people's concerns in a distributed working environment. I think that's really, really important. So I work in the technology for communication and engagement for employees. We've seen a significant uplift in activity across our communication platform during lockdown. And I think it's because the typical way that people communicate when they're face-to-face and, in a localized environment, is very different than the way they communicate when they're remote. So just those things about, the crack and just talking about the latest Netflix series you're watching in the office, those kind of things have been kind of compromised now. And in a distributed remote environment, the exchange of information tends to be very transactional. Can I have that report, please? Or, can you comment on this article or something like that? And very seldom is it more kind of spontaneous and informal. And I think that's going to be a problem in the future of work if it's not addressed culturally from an organization. So what we see with the companies that are using our platform, which is a much more kind of social interaction, it's informal, it's more kind of, less kind of transactional, is people are actually more engaged. We just conducted a survey of our customers, and there's some significant increased engagement rates. Ironically, higher engagement sometimes than happened before COVID. So I think, to answer your question in terms of, I think it's really important for organizations to get ahead of the curve here in terms of, what do you do when your employees don't go back to the office? They don't want to, or you actually realize as an organization that you actually have a happier, more retained employee base by having them remote. That's not the end of that situation. You then have to solve for the cultural flexibility you need to do that. And I think communication is
Yeah, totally agree. And if I can move now to Rob and chat a little bit about employee resilience. So if the future of work looks a lot like what we've going on right now, how does the human body handle this kind of stress of a blended work-life situation over long periods of time, especially? And I know there's a bit of science behind this because you've done some research on this.
Yeah, I'm going to blast everybody with science now and try and make myself sound really intelligent here. But it's so we have done some research in Gartner around the distress and the emotional upheaval we're experiencing being pushed remote. And I would say I'm probably more on the introverted side. So adapting to the remote full-time environment has been easier, but I still would, have that craving for maybe one day a week in an office. So I think there's a blend. There's definitely need for that. But yeah, the neuroscience behind it. One of the key things that we're missing is the social interaction, and that's underlying is serotonin that's created there that makes you feel happier when you're connecting with people. Having these. And I know it's always the, in quote unquote, water cooler conversations. How many people actually have those conversations at water coolers because you tend to be too loud and people beside you start giving out and giving you dirty looks. But it's the walks to the cafeteria or whatever it is. People miss that. And when that's not there, as we're working from home, there's this kind of information void that's created. And then as humans, we will populate that void with imagination and sometimes start telling ourselves stories around not being maybe performing as well as I could, or God, I'm not talking with my manager enough, I'm not influencing them, they can't see the work I'm doing, oh God, maybe I won't get that promotion after all. And you start, spiraling, and self-doubt can arise. And all this comes into the emotional intelligence realm, but it's so true. So we have kind of looked at ways you can kind of overcome that. And as leaders, to be aware of this as you can tap into this with your remote work as managers, because I think one of the biggest things that happened over the last 6 months is the role of the middle level manager has changed massively from somebody that would manage transactional and just performance, and now they need to know how the person on the other side of the Zoom call is feeling, and it's asking those questions, to Tom's point, a little bit of empathy and compassion, and do that in an authentic, genuine way. Because if you're doing it as a scripted, how are you feeling? Spend the first 5 minutes of your one-to-one digging into the person's family time and then zooming on to the next conversation. That's not authentic. That's worse than not doing it at all. So yeah, we look at certain areas around developing that culture of resilience. One is talking about impact over just kind of results. So I might be still meeting my deadlines, but am I having that impact on my manager that they see I'm really going that extra mile? So as a leader, as a boss, just be aware of that impact. Are they are you expressing back to them that you are having an impact, that you are making a difference, and to the empathy point, understanding this is not easy, which leads into vulnerability as well, right? So if we, as a leader, say, and it's kind of music to my ears when I hear a leader saying, I actually don't have all the answers, or I got that wrong, I've made a mistake and I need your help, or how could I do this better? Those sort of just sentences are so powerful that makes the people on the other side of the Zoom call, your team members, just relax in, well, if they haven't got it all figured out, I feel more psychologically safe. And that, definitely has a positive impact. To the water cooler, the info void, there's this concept of a sense of belonging versus sense of tribe. And within the remote environment, you still have a sense of belonging because you probably still talk to your team very regularly. The sense of tribe is kind of that next level where you're missing having the conversation with Tom from facilities, where you might randomly meet on the way to the restroom or whatever. That is not there anymore. So it's looking at ways that you can promote that cross-team connection and in a virtual environment, to try and maybe create these cross-team projects, or still make that effort as a team leader, as a manager, to create those bonds, to create that sense of tribe, because it just brings it to that next level. So there's kind of the kind of science and some of the maybe practical approaches that we've done research, and we get a lot of really positive feedback on that.
Cool, thank you, Rob. And on that empathy note as well, I'd like to go back to Tom. Tom, how important now is it to evolve our managers into leaders, and empathetic leadership in particular, in this kind of, more and more contactless environment? How to get empathy across on a Zoom line, as they say, and how do we train our managers going forward?
Short answer, no idea.
All right, I've got a question for you then, because I do believe, I'm a firm believer, I might be proven wrong, but I do believe the arts degree is going to make a big comeback, because it allows you to combine what would have been unusual combinations in the past, like computer science and psychology, IoT and sociology, those kind of urban design and other things like that. So those unusual combinations are...
Philosophy
exactly.
is one. Ethics around AI is going to be a big one going forward, for example.
Yeah, I think so. I do think how we learn and the skills combinations we're going to need going forward are definitely going to change. Let me move now to, maybe if I move back to Pete.
If I can make a couple of quick comments on some of the earlier contributions there. I think Rob made some good points there around management and the whole idea of empathy. There's also trust required there as well, though, because do you want to tell your manager you're suffering from anxiety? Maybe you do, maybe it's a good thing, but if you're in an environment where maybe you're feeling that job security could be an issue, making yourself vulnerable could maybe make you more worried about your job security. You know, if my manager has to get rid of, you know, 3 people, will he or she get rid of the ones who are suffering more? Or, you know, so it's a double-edged sword, and one that has to be, it's a real tightrope, that one, that has to be managed very, very, very carefully. On the working from a home point, again, the other aspect of that, I was talking to a colleague the other day who's in the US, and he said that he's loving being at home because it means he can actually put his head down and work away and not have people passing his desk and stopping to chat to him all the time and interrupting him. So again, that's a double-edged thing as well. And I think one thing that, and you know, as someone who's worked for home from 16 years, it doesn't apply to me, but something that you often get to do in larger companies where they have big offices is, you know, you go to lunch with colleagues, and that's where a lot of the conversations take place. So possibly organizations could have virtual lunch times where people, you know, they spin up lunch rooms and people go and have lunch together virtually. Those kind of things can happen as well.
Absolutely, and we're seeing a lot of that now, virtual coffees, and you know, people are getting very creative around creating those connections. And trust, we definitely see trust as a big thing in regard to you know, managers and leaders trusting their employees, empowering their employees, but also it's important for employees to make your work visible. And that's, you got to do that in a different way when you're in a virtual environment. But Pete, if I could move to you, someone said to me the other day, the only difference between working for one company today and another company tomorrow is you dial into a different Zoom call. You know, when the barriers to moving are that low, how do employers retain employee loyalty? Any advice there?
Yeah, good one. We commissioned a survey a few weeks ago of 1,000 employees globally. We asked them 10, 11 questions. And one of those questions was, are you more likely to stay with your current employer if they continue to offer you remote working as an option? And 90% responded yes. So I genuinely feel that you know, it's really going to impact businesses in terms of how competitive you can be in acquiring and retaining talent that, you know, the more talent you have, the more options you have. And if you want a hybrid environment, I think it's going to become, because it's kind of part of the norm, right? Most talented employees will expect that. So I think it kind of levels the playing field to a certain extent, right? That like you can cast the net wide for that talent and work in nice places like Seville, for example, and you know, go to where the talent is. Now, I think that also will present some real challenges, right? I was actually talking to someone yesterday about this, saying that, well, what if someone who, you know, wanted to work in Cork for a company that was headquartered in Santa Clara, California, you know, and I've worked a lot in Santa Clara, California, and the salaries there are not the salaries here. So how do you do that in terms of compensation? How do you manage that? How do you normalize that? That's going to be a real challenge for HR going forward. But I do just want to come back just on, Gillian, just on one important point that a few of us have talked about, and that's leadership. I think that's going to be absolutely key. I think executive leadership down to middle management, down to employees, no one's really geared up for this, right? This is not something that anybody expected. I think it's important to have a much more transparency from executive leadership. So I've talked to lots of execs talk about this around the conference table, but how does that actually get into the mindset and psychology of the employee? And then I think to Tom's point, like how do middle management gear up to deal with this? Because I think now you have to take the concept of what we're calling the whole person, not a role, employee, but a person. So when you talk to that person, it's not just about the projects they've completed, but it's how the kid's doing at school. And that's questions that, you know, certainly middle management are not really used to asking. So it's massively important change that has to be recognized.
Can I ask Pete there a question? Pete, the point you make about working for a company in Santa Clara and pay scales, I've no idea, and this is why I'm asking, but I have to think that tax legislation means that you have to be paid in the country where you are tax resident. So if you are tax resident in Ireland, you have to be paid by an Irish company, by an Irish company. So if it's an American company, my understanding is they would have to set up an Irish subsidiary and pay you in Ireland.
That's true, Tom. I think what my comment there was really focused on the psychology of the employee, right? So I'll give you an example. So you have a software developer, a senior software developer in Santa Clara, that can easily be paid $250,000 as a senior software developer there, right? Decide they want to move to the, let's say, the Cork office. Yet they have to be paid out of Cork. There are tax legislations, but that mindset is, I'm going to be paid similar to that, right? Otherwise, either I'm not going to move or I'm going to move somewhere else or work for another company that may pay me more. So I think it's less about the kind of the policy and the legal ramifications. I think it's the psychological ramifications of the decision-making process for employees that they have to now take that into account, if that makes sense.
Sure, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those salaries as well factor in cost of living. And if you're not living in that location, but actually living in a different country, it's going to be relative, right? It's going to be indicative of the country you're working in. And on that note, if I could go to Vanessa, we're used to applying for jobs in Ireland. It looks like going forward, we will be able to apply for jobs around the globe. Are we ready for that as a mindset and as a culture? Is that something we need to get ready for?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's like two mindset shifts that we're all going to experience. And the first is around that applying for jobs and seeing where I can be discovered. Is it locally, nationally, or globally? And as you may be aware, we're currently working with Cork and the county, so people are actively registering to map their skills. And the purpose of doing this exercise, both for workers to map their skills, is to see, well, what's the talent of Cork? Because now that the world has gone global, there are firms in San Francisco, whereas historically they would have looked at the talent of Ireland, predominantly looked at the cities, and then thought about landing here. Now it's a case of, well, let's see the talent. It doesn't necessarily have to be the city. So look, it's wonderful to see we've people in Cork registering in the smallest of towns, and they have just got connectivity maybe in the last 6 months. And there's a private digital hub just opening up, because they're the boxes that you tick in order to be able to work for a company anywhere in the world. And like on that point, we actually made a decision during lockdown to have Abodu being free for companies indefinitely so that they can connect. And what we're seeing is that the people that are wanting to be discovered are putting in their details. They're saying they want to work from home full time. Actually, the biggest trend right now in the last 6 weeks, maybe it's reflective of us all being home for so long, is that people want to co-work or a hybrid model. That's really what they want, but they're specifying that. And now companies locally and globally are being matched. It really doesn't matter. And as we've covered, the tax is paid here. So from a mapping perspective, we've seen thousands of skills, and we've actually discovered skills in Cork we didn't even know there were clusters of. So I think that's the first shift as to the job process and application. And then the second is about where you live. And I know this sounds funny, but like when I first went remote, I was living in quite a built-up area in England. And I stayed in that built-up area for 3 years, remote working, until I remember interviewing a candidate one day, and they said, so you remote work, you could live anywhere, couldn't you? As long as there's connectivity. And it was like in a eureka moment. And then we had a great time over the next 6-12 months looking for property across 3 countries. That was just incredible. And like Tom's had the experience of moving to Spain, you now get to choose, your choice of destinations no longer within the 30-minute, 60-minute commute. It's now, where do I really want to live? And what's been interesting with the Cork talent mapping is not only have we seen people register in Cork, but people that are in Dublin wanting to go back to Cork, and diaspora in the US and other countries, which maybe for the foreseeable future, it's just not too comfortable to be working. And some of them are actually negotiating with their employers to move back and start paying tax in Ireland. And others are saying, well, look, I'll start working for that job while I'm still in the US, pass probation, and then get the family back on the plane and move home. So the final point on this is I had an experience last week with a San Francisco company who wanted to see the talent of Cork. And we were able to compare salaries of engineers in regional areas in Cork versus San Francisco. And all I can say is there's gasps. And not that they want to undermine paying, you know, they want to give the full benefits, but as you say, it's cost of living. So I think the potential is bright, but for regions and counties now, the government have to kind of get behind the skills of the people and know that the competition is now global.
When I moved to
You're
Spain,
absolutely right.
When I moved to Spain in 2008, I moved here for personal rather than professional reasons, but I knew I could because while I didn't speak Spanish at the time, I already had a job lined up which would allow me to work remotely, and I had already been working 4 years remotely before moving to Spain, so I knew I could do it. So yeah, you can live and work anywhere.
And I think there's great freedom in that, Tom and Vanessa. And I think there's as well opportunities for rural Ireland and for regional locations, people who want to stay in the town that they were born and raised, but also want to work in kind of like that high-tech environment and that urban feeling. And you get that by having this remote working mix, which is, you know, I think there's a lot of freedom in that. Rob, I want to talk a little bit about so as we talk about talent, I want to talk a little bit about neurodiversity. So I think there's an untapped pool of talent there. Can you tell us a little bit about your work there and what we can expect in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very important area. As you know, Jill, I was working in Dell and EMC for a long time, and towards the end there's been a neurodiverse program spinning up in Dell. So that kind of seeded some of my thinking. And since I moved to Gartner, two of the first 3 pieces of research I put together is around neurodiversity, and digging into it, there's a huge untapped pool of neurodiverse talent out there. So the data I can just pull up here is something like only maybe 14% of neurodiverse individuals that have autism are employed, and something like 70% of them have college degrees, right? So as we look back at it, from a HR perspective, they're being filtered out. The systems and processes HRs typically have trying to identify new talent doesn't account for neurodiverse individuals. It's just not part of their systems and processes today, and they're missing out massively. So we talk about, you know, invisible talent from all over the world, but it's probably on your doorstep. It's just you're not set up properly for that. And from the research I've done, you know, Microsoft, Dell, Chase Morgan, all across all industries have set up neurodiverse programs.
SAP as well.
SAP have a big one, absolutely, as well. Yeah, and I have them cited in the research numerous times. Basically, and they're probably predominantly focused on autism, I think. But and I think they have made a commitment that 1% of their workforce will be neurodiverse by a point in time, maybe in 3 or 4 years. So a huge advocate for that. And you know, it's not an effort of socially the right thing to do. There's business value in it, and you know, both points are very, very important. And I think it's just beginning to become more apparent that it's available, that they're there, and it's about the first note we put together was around attracting neurodiverse talent. So really identifying them and setting up the right processes from an interview perspective, from a sourcing perspective, you know, tapping into universities and communities that are existing of neurodiverse individuals and bringing them in. And like, just as one example that always stands out is when you're doing an interview with a neurotypical candidate, it could be like this, 1-to-1, half an hour. Some of the neurodiverse processes for interviews could be a week-long placement or you know, an unspecified time in an interview with a job coach that can be involved, that can assist the neurodiverse individual to get through the interview and give feedback in real time. So very much untapped and very much available. And then the second piece that hasn't been published yet will be around making them more included in an organization and training for team members, training for managers. And interesting, last night I was just reading around performance management for neurodiverse. It should be exactly the same. The areas you would tweak it, so if they're not performing, that should be treated like everybody else, and that's an inclusive mindset. It's more around how you develop that talent and how you provide opportunities for them into the future. So it's exciting stuff, and I think there's a huge opportunity there for CIOs. And again, just lastly, it was the roles we're looking at. The neurodiverse talent typically are suited more to highly technical roles, data analytics, cybersecurity, pattern matching, as a starting point. But that's not to say there's not opportunities across organizations, because cross-functional teams bringing IT and other parts of the business together is happening more and more. So excited about it, and so many good stories out there already. I think there's a lot of opportunity into the future with it.
Any data there, Rob, on retention rates?
Higher than actually normal neurotypical, and again, that was just something I looked at last night, that the data shows neurotypical. Now again, it's a small sample size, but it is off the top of my mind that higher than neurotypical.
Yeah.
Very interesting, and I do believe it's an untapped talent pool for us, and a lot of the strengths of neurodiversity and the areas where they're really, really strong are in the tech space, where we need those skills. So, and I think managers need special training now in interviewing neurodiverse candidates and working with neurodiverse teams. So I think we're going to see a lot in that space coming forward. Pete, I might just go to you before I go to Tom on the gig economy, so that gives Tom a little bit of a minute or two to start preparing that one. What are you seeing customers do in addressing communication and engagement challenges in the new workforce?
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see. I mean, so we can see kind of the communication that's going on within the organizations, and certainly during lockdown, we see, I mean, Woodies is a great example, actually. We're all familiar with Woodies, and obviously a large percentage of their workforce were furloughed during lockdown. Those employees, they literally were not working at all, and most of them don't have access to, they don't have a digital profile, right? They have no corporate email address or a corporate device or anything. So, how are they going to kind of keep in touch and communicate more? And also, how was the organization going to communicate to them about what was going on during lockdown? So they used our platform, so they're able to do that. But what was really interesting is the interaction between those employees increased during lockdown. And a lot of that dialogue wasn't necessarily anything about work. It was just, kind of quizzes and competitions and just keeping people connected. So I think that's really interesting. I think this distributed working environment affords, risk obviously, but also a lot of opportunity to kind of level the playing field. Where, some of the things that we saw coming from these employees were that a lot of them had some great ideas that floated up to executive management in the company about, well, I was thinking, well, I've got spare time, what should we do this? And great, what a great idea. So I think there's an opportunity here to, while people are not literally just doing their job in their office or in their working environment, they're at home or in a remote location, and they can unlock creativity. And I think technology plays a massive role in facilitating the unlocking of that creativity and these ideas and pouring them out there in front of groups of people. And, there are some people who are pretty introverted, pretty shy, but when you get them on social media, they have a completely different persona, and they have some great thoughts, right? And exactly as a platform like ours, that's what it does. It unlocks that kind of creativity. So we look on this as a tremendous opportunity for organizations if you get the culture right, to enable more transparency from executive leadership. We have CEOs in our companies that are posting pictures of, them working from home with a kid on the lap kind of thing. And you would never, most of the time, you get just a broadcast email from the CEO with an announcement. You don't normally get visibility into their working life. And that has a tremendously positive impact on engagement and morale within the employee base. And long may that can continue, because, like I say, remote working can level that playing field. So we see great opportunity going forward for that.
Cool, thanks, Peter. And I know when I'm on any of those, if we're watching any kind of quarterly broadcast or anything like that, we're all mad having a look at the CEO's house in the background, and all of the, their dogs and all that fun stuff. But it does, of course, it makes them very human. And I think they set the scene, right? They set what is acceptable. So when we see the senior leaders doing this, it makes it more acceptable for us to, to have a child on our lap while we're on a call, or to be turning on and off our cameras while people are entering the room and that kind of thing. I think it's really, really important to set the bar from senior leadership. Tom, because future of work is not just about remote working, right? Although it feels like that at the moment. I want to talk a little bit about the gig economy. And we saw there from the last poll that about a quarter of our respondents are anxious about the future of work. And you know, that kind of, I guess we're still on the road to the gig economy, and like a labour market kind of characterised by short-term contracts and freelance work. And as we automate more, maybe what will be valued in terms of skill, and that will be things that are handmade and things that are unique and that kind of thing. You know, anything you're seeing there with regard to the gig economy that, you know, we all see Deliveroo, and we all see all these roles that are out there. Are we going to see more and more of that, or do you think that's going to settle down and we're done, and that's probably going to be the extent of it?
Yeah, I think the answer is it depends. I think, for example, things like online deliveries. That market is exploded for delivery drivers, for example. I know here in Spain, when we get deliveries now from Amazon or wherever, you know, half the time it's someone in a private vehicle who obviously has decided to spin up a delivery business of their own and have been given this task by Amazon or whoever because they're short of delivery people. You know, so that for example, and then that will become more regularized, I have to think, over time. I know Amazon in particular are making a move to bring all of their delivery internal, so that, you know, you will have Amazon trucks arriving at your door rather than third-party ones or someone in their private car. But if we think of other gig economy roles, if we think of things like Uber, Lyft, or Airbnb, I think in the short term they're in big trouble. And you know, depending on vaccines and things like that, and the length of this. I think people are going to be slow to get into a stranger's car where they don't know who has been in the car before them. They don't know what disinfection protocols have been put in place by the driver, or similarly with an Airbnb. So I think, and we've seen it, you know, those businesses have taken a huge hit. And, you know, similarly with public transport, I have to think. So those are in trouble. So the answer to your question, I think, is it depends, gig economy wise. Some areas will grow, others will be stagnant, and others, you know, might not survive.
Jill, can I just jump in a little bit on top of what Tom had said? Just preparing a presentation around the workforce model of the future, and we've got some data to say, and to Tom's point, absolutely, some industries are going to suffer more. There's going to be winners and losers, and we know that. In some industries, I have data around a 75% increase in demand for gig workers over the last 6 months, for benefits of cost savings, increased flexibility. You know, you don't obviously have to comp and ben is as big a concern. Getting a diverse range of talent into your organization for short-term projects can be useful, help the current teams and groups work and think a little bit differently. So I think, to your point as well, Tom, it's a double-edged sword as well. Like, there's probably a lot of upsides when you dig into it, and a lot of and risk reward is always key. So there are some certain factors that you would need to look at, is just selecting the right vendor. Are they reputable? Do you tap into this kind of gig platform, or do you work with an MSP that kind of manages the gig environment or workers as well? So but I think it's one that will grow massively in some areas, but others that involve maybe a lot of personal interaction, physical contact, it can be more risky for sure.
So it looks like it's going to be a future of winners and losers. So we'll watch this space as to see where that goes, because there, you know, we often say never waste a good crisis. There are certainly those who are benefiting right now. We're going to move now to audience questions, and gosh, I'm looking at them here. The people are typing paragraphs here. So hey, let me go with right, Tom. There's one there for you from Jerry Murphy. Great to see you again. Considering the path that new and emerging tech was coming on stream prior to the lockdown and COVID, e.g. edge computing, IoT, AR, VR, cyber, etc. Do you think we should review the broad strategy on these? What impact will the new normal have on the requirement to spin these up faster, repurpose direction of some, create new ones? I'm laughing. If the question is too rambling, you can ignore it. No, Jerry, we ignore no questions. It is a great question. So, Tom?
Yeah, it is a great question. Thanks, Jerry. I think, again, like many of these things, the answer is it depends. So, you know, we have 4,500 products on our books in SAP. Some of them are booming right now, you know, the supply chain business, particularly the cloud delivered stuff, absolutely booming. Others, we bought Concur back in, what was it, 2010 or 2012, something like that, you know, all about travel expenses. No one's using that platform right now, or very few anyway. So the technologies that you're referring to there, Jerry, the kind of AI, ML, IoT, blockchain, all these kind of things, again, to my it depends point, it depends, because for use of those technologies in some of the Concur product set, not at all. Whereas in the supply chain product set, I mentioned earlier, talking to Gillian, we were talking about the delivery of the vaccines. And absolutely, we'll need IoT, we'll need AI, we'll need ML, we'll need blockchain for track and trace of the vaccines to make sure that we can say with absolute certainty that this vaccine came from this production facility, that it has been at this temperature range for the entirety of its lifespan until it's arrived at this treatment center, you know, all that kind of thing. And you need IoT, you need comms, you need blockchain, you need big data lakes, you need analytics to deliver all of that. So yes and no, it depends is the answer to that question, I think.
Thanks, Tom. And there's one coming in there as well around, maybe we're, if I paraphrase it, maybe we're in a little bit of a bubble right now when we say remote working is great, because we all are on calls with people we knew in the office. We recognize, we have context when we talk about, oh, the cafeteria and, oh, the hallways and all of this kind of stuff. But what happens in 6 months' time or a year's time, when new people join, they have no concept of the physical building, they don't recognize the faces. Are we going to lose some momentum there? It's clearly not going to be the same experience that we're having right now. It's going to be different for those who join new. Anybody like to take that one?
Can I take that, just because I'm a living, breathing example of the opposite, in that I started with Gartner 3.5 months ago, and it's been 100% remote, and I've never met anyone on the team so far, and it's been going great. And maybe, you know, that says maybe a lot about me in some ways. I don't know if that's good or bad either, but I think it's what you make it, right? And they said the data is, you know, the last 6 months absolutely shows higher productivity, but that's all we can go on for such a mass global experiment, right? We don't know what it's going to be in 6 months. We do a virtual book club kind of tied to the podcast, and we talked about the Culture Code, a book the other night, and one of the key takeaways that we all had from it is that we're now in a learning environment. Everything we're doing is we're learning, like what's going on, what's working, what isn't. So we're experimenting constantly, and for some that will work out, for others may not. I think it comes to, the onus should be on all of us to engage, and the leadership should be creating an environment, fostering it, cultivating, whatever term you want to use, to help everybody connect. And in the next 6-12 months, it's going to be harder because of the lack of physical opportunity to connect. Then maybe we come back to some sort of new normal where there is opportunity to be in office and stuff. But it's using the technologies, using the tools, using the tips or hacks that we all mentioned, and stepping up. That, you know, the person who put that in, I'm not sure, maybe can take personal accountability to say, I'm going to make it work and I'm going to become a leader. There's a huge opportunity for people to become virtual leaders in a way here, right? And really step up. So I think, not to be too optimistic about it, I do believe we can take control a lot of this, and let the data tell the story in a year's time or more, if that productivity goes up or down, or people's mental health or well-being goes up or down. It's over the longer term. We'll have to be able to decide that.
Yeah, I think Rob, if I can just add to that, it's we have to realize that although this has been kind of this mass experiment, it has been a forced one. And those past 6 months that we've been in this forced remote working environment has been a massively unnatural situation. But we have learned, right? We have learned that people, can be more productive working remotely. Not everyone, but from the majority, and that organisations are starting to recognise that. But I think that now, as we hopefully, fingers crossed, start to go into an environment where it's a little bit more normal, outside of the working environment, that's when the real test is going to start to happen, right? And I think organizations, now that they start to realize that, this actually works, they are going to start to be recruiting people all over the world. And as that settles down, how does that work when everyone be kind of, within 10 miles of Douglas in Cork, and now they're actually separated all over the world? Most organizations are really not ready for that yet. So I think, again, come back to a point I made earlier about considering the whole person. I think, people are not going to be employees anymore. They are genuinely going to be people that you need to take into account their personal situation just as importantly as their professional.
Absolutely. And I think, as you said, they're people, and everyone goes through that change curve, and that range of emotions, and settle into new changes very differently. So the role of managers in supporting their teams through all of that in a personal way, and also to understand that, resistance isn't resistance for the sake of it. It's usually there's some underlying emotion that, if it can be talked through by a manager with the employee, you can get at what that is, get under the hood a little bit, and start to, relieve some of those pressures or stresses, if you like. Vanessa, I might move to you on one of the questions that's there. The role of education in preparing our workforce. When you talked about skills earlier, do you see the role of education changing now in this new environment?
I do, in a big way. I mean, I think that I was only speaking with UCC yesterday, and I think, third level education, for example, they've done a phenomenal job going remote and going online in a matter of, I think in some cases they had hours notices, and now they're embracing Freshers Week and onboarding people and trying to give them that social impact by bringing them in very small numbers. But it's been a huge challenge. And I think if I look at the mapping that we've done for Cork, we're starting to see skills, not just from what people have, but also the skills from industry and companies and what they need or will need. And I think that we can start predicting what are the skills that are going to be needed and what's the skills gap. And so education and third level more than ever need to be sort of aware of how industry is changing and supplying the education needed for people and giving that remotely. And I think, circling back to the points that have come up on diversity, this is an amazing opportunity to broaden talent pools. I mean, I know, having worked in recruitment and this space for a very long time, it is very frustrating when you're sourcing for positions, whether you're a recruiter, a hiring manager, or C-level, and there's this certain box that someone needs to fit. And one of the, I'm going to use the word beautiful, one of the beautiful things of embracing this new world of work is that we can now have people in the workforce who probably before, for whatever mobility challenge, couldn't get to the office. We can now have returning parents, and this links in with the gig economy. Sometimes the gig economy is kind of tarnished with this brush of there's lack of job security and exploitation on pricing, but actually it's a super opportunity to help maybe graduates get jobs. Over 51% right now are unemployed, and I think they really face a tough 12 months. And so if there are any employers on listening today, and obviously your welfare is your workers, absolutely. Talented graduates out there that would work for internships, paid or free, or do gig work. So I think that creating these new projects for the next level generation of workers is our social responsibility. And actually they're phenomenal and they're incredible. And the universities and third level education providers will be so grateful to industry to do this. But it's a scary time, but it is an exciting time. And I think more than ever, government, business, people, and education, we all need to come together and work really closely together.
Agreed. And yeah, and if we get that mix right, I think, as you said, there can be opportunities for people who never had opportunities in the past, 10, 20 years. So I think that's a great call out there. Thanks, Vanessa. One last question before we wrap up. Very, very applicable to Ireland. So how do you maintain motivation levels in employees in a work from home environment in the winter months when it's dark when you're getting up and it's dark when you're going to bed and you're not leaving the house? Who wants to take that one? I see Pete smiling.
Everybody's thinking the same thing. They just don't want to say it, I guess. But
wine. It's called wine.
That's it. You said it, Jill. That's it.
It's a Guinness, but wine will do as well. Yeah.
Yeah. It is a tough one, isn't it?
Really tough. It's really tough.
Yeah, I think we need to encourage people to maybe block like 30 minutes in their calendar at the center of the day to go for a walk while it is bright. Or maybe, make sure you block out 30 minutes to have your meal with the family or whatever it is. I think we're just going to have to, where we used to do things before we went to work or when we came back from work, we're now going to have to try calendar them in, for want of a better word, into the day so that we do get light and fresh air and the walk and the bit of food and the bit of exercise and all those kind of things. Any thoughts there?
I think that's a good one because, yeah, most of us are now working from online calendars that our teammates have access to, and we're not trapped in a 9 to 5 anymore. I set my calendar to start at 10 a.m. so that I can go for that 4-kilometer walk in the morning before. And I work typically until 8 o'clock in the evening because I take a couple of breaks during the day. And most of the people, well, a lot of the people I'm working with are based in the US anyway. So I can schedule to take an hour here or an hour there with no problem. It may not be the same for people who are based in Ireland, only dealing with people in the same time zone. But no, for me, I do that regularly. I do block out times. I block out a half an hour in the afternoon for every day for lunch with the family, to your point, Gillian.
I think also
I think
be very tempting, when the weather's bad, it's dark, to kind of hunker down and just work by yourself. I think if you are in a situation where you are nearby, at least, kind of drivable distance into some of your colleagues. I know occasionally some of our teams, even cross-functional teams in the company, will just get together for a coffee or get together for a drink at night or something. Just make sure you're maintaining we are social animals, right? Let's make sure we're maintaining some kind of interaction with our colleagues, and especially when it's dark and rainy and you just want to stay inside all the time. It's important to get out there because it just gives you a lift when you interact.
I would just say one kind of culture hack that I think is really useful, and it's a two-way one. The manager or leader would need to do it. Have a walking one-to-one, talk on the phone, go for a stroll, and you can combine your walk with your talk and your feedback, and it hits all the boxes. And it shouldn't be feeling like, God, I'm not sitting at my desk, so I can't do my one-to-one. Even do it once every couple of weeks, but just something like that can combine lots and always get good feedback on that one.
Nice.
Love that idea, Rob. I love the culture hack phrase as well. And it's a great idea. There were lots more questions we didn't get to, folks, but I'm hoping that a lot of them were touched on throughout the conversation this morning. So a huge thank you to the panel. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for taking time out of your busy calendars this morning and for staying with us here on another video conference. So a huge thank you. You've been amazing. You can, as they say, give everyone a real awkward wave now. And turn off your mics and cameras when you are ready. So huge thank you.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks
all. Take care.
All right.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So this is the end of this actual session, but there is more. So the afternoon workshop starts at 2 p.m. and Ryan Adams from Instill will lead a live coding session. So I'm building a serverless app with the AWS Cloud Development Kit. So if you've already registered for that, we'll see you there. I also encourage you to tune into tomorrow's session on the digitalization of biopharma manufacturing. And you can get more details on speakers and panelists and all of that at techsummit.ie, which has all the details. two final shout outs before we leave. 3:30 tomorrow, that's Friday, there's a special IT at Cork members and TechFest ticket holders event with Liam Casey. He is the founder and CEO of PCH International. So all ticket holders that have been registered for the event should have received a link with a Zoom link in there now, and that will definitely be worth tuning into. We are also excited to bring you a new executive fireside chat series in partnership with KPMG Ireland. And we're thrilled to be kicking that series off with Bask Iyer, who is the CIO of VMware, next Thursday, the 24th of September. And again, this one is free for all IT at Cork members and the general public. However, registration is essential. So the link is on the IT at Cork website, itcork.ie. That is it for me, folks. I hope you enjoyed the future of work. It's ahead of us all. We're right in the middle of it as well. I hope it works for everybody. I hope where we all land in this social experiment is in a positive way, and we will look back on 2020 as being revolutionary and a turning point for how we work. So thank you for joining us. Enjoy the rest of the day. Talk to you soon.